I never thought I'd believe in ghosts, until I became one of their messengers. My name is Elias. I used to live alone in a creaky Victorian house on the edge of town. It was the kind of place that held its breath when you walked in. The walls groaned. The pipes whispered. But I chalked it up to age. Old houses have personalities, I told myself. They sigh and stretch like tired bones. But what happened under the floorboards wasn't natural. It started last winter, during the quiet hours, just before sleep, when everything feels too still. That night, the wind was clawing at the shutters, and I was lying in bed with the covers pulled up to my chin. I had the strangest sensation that I wasn't alone. Not the usual paranoia. This was different. There was presence. Something watching me from beneath. Then came the whisper. It started faintly, so soft I thought it was a trick of the wind. A low murmur rising from the floorboards under my bed. At first, I couldn't make out the words. Just the tone, gentle, almost pleading. I pressed my ear to the wooden floor. That's when I heard it, clear as a lullaby sung through tears. Don't forget me. Please, he left me here. The voice belonged to a young girl. Fractured, distant, as if echoing from beneath the earth. I recoiled, heart pounding, but something inside me, the part that still trusted dreams, held me still. I whispered back. Who are you? There was a pause. A long, aching silence. Then she said, I'm still cold. He never meant to leave me. But he closed the lid. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I searched the basement. Nothing but dust and forgotten furniture. But I couldn't shake her voice. For weeks, she returned at night, whispering the same words. The same sorrow. Over and over. Please remember me. He left me in the dark. I heard the nails go in. The worst part. I started dreaming about her. Dreams where I was a man in old boots and gloves, hammering boards shut while a child wept behind me. The floor was soft. The soil freshly turned. I wasn't sure if these dreams were hers, or mine. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I tore open the floorboards. There, in the hollow beneath my bed, I found an old wooden box. Sealed. Nailed shut. The air around it felt cold as January. I called the police. They took it away. Said it was bones. Small ones. They never told me her name. But I still hear her, less often now. Just on certain nights, when the moon hangs low and the wind stands still. She says, "Thank you, Elias." And then she fades. But I know she's not gone. Not really. Some voices never leave. They just wait beneath the floorboards. My name is Maren. I used to live in a rental apartment above an antique shop in New Hampshire. It had that old-world charm, crown molding, uneven floors, windows that whistled in the wind. But it was the mirror in the hallway that made me feel watched. It was tall, silver-framed, older than the building itself. The landlord told me it had belonged to the shop owner's grandmother, passed down through generations. They didn't want it damaged in storage, so it stayed hung on the wall across from my bedroom door. I never saw my reflection clearly in that thing. It always looked slower. Like it lagged behind by a heartbeat. At first, I blamed it on the age of the glass. Then I noticed something strange. My reflection blinked when I didn't. I'd be brushing my hair, looking into the mirror, and the reflection would smile faintly, just at the corners of its mouth. or tilt its head slightly to the left when I hadn't moved at all. It didn't happen every night. Only when I left the hallway light on. And then came the tapping. Soft. Barely audible. Like a fingernail on glass. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I'd hear it from the hallway. Tap. 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 I tried covering the mirror with a blanket. The sound stopped. Until one night, I forgot to cover it. That was the first time I saw her. I was passing the hallway on my way to the bathroom when I caught something in the mirror. A shadow behind me. A tall, slender figure with hair like wet rope and eyes too wide. When I spun around, there was nothing there. But her reflection remained in the mirror, for 3 seconds longer than it should have. I stopped sleeping well after that. Every night, I swore I heard faint whispers from the hallway. A woman's voice repeating something I couldn't quite understand. One night, I gathered my courage and stood in front of the mirror. I whispered, "What do you want?" Her answer came clearly, not in sound, but in my mind. To be seen. To be free. You look like her. You have her eyes. I don't know who she was. Maybe someone from the mirror's past. A girl trapped inside it, a memory repeating itself. I started wearing a sleep mask and never left the hallway light on again. Then one night, the mirror shattered. No one touched it. No storm outside. No tremors. Just an explosive crash at 3:17 a.m. When I stepped into the hallway, there was no reflection, just broken shards across the floor, and in one piece, I swear I saw a woman walking away into fog. I moved out the next week. But sometimes, when I pass by shop windows at night, I catch a glimpse of her behind me. Just for a second. Watching. And in those moments, the reflection smiles. Not mine. Hers. I'm not crazy. I know how that sounds. But please, just listen. My name is Jonah, and for one summer, I worked as a night security guard at an old boarding school in Maine. The building was ancient, Gothic arches, stained glass windows, and a maze of hallways that seemed to bend and shift depending on the hour. The day staff avoided the West Wing. They claimed it was sealed off, too unsafe after a fire decades ago. But one night, while making my rounds, I found a door open in that very wing. There was no scorch on the walls. No sign of any damage. Just a long corridor lit by flickering wall sconces, leading to a room at the very end. It wasn't on the blueprint. I checked. Inside, it was cold. Not just no heating cold. I'm talking frost on the inside of the glass, breath clouds in the air cold. Yet something pulled me in. It was a bedroom. Impossibly well kept. Bed made, books stacked neatly on the desk, an old radio playing the faintest hum of static. And on the desk, a journal. I shouldn't have opened it. The writing was neat. A girl's handwriting. Dozens of entries. All dated 1952. But the dates stopped abruptly. The final entry read. He said he'd come back. He promised. But now they've sealed the doors. I heard the boards go up. I heard them praying. If someone finds this, please, tell him I waited. I waited, and I dreamed of the sea. I stayed there for what felt like an hour, reading every page. But when I turned to leave, the hallway was gone. In its place, just a blank brick wall. I panicked. Kicked at the wall. Searched for another way out. The door wouldn't open. The window wouldn't budge. Then the radio stopped. And I heard her voice. Soft. Right behind me. Jonah. You found me. I knew you'd come back. I didn't answer. I couldn't move. She stepped into view, young, pale, wearing a uniform too old for the time. She looked relieved. Like someone waking from a long sleep. I asked who she was. She said her name was Lillian. Then she whispered something I'll never forget. I made this room for you. So we could finish waiting, together. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was lying in the West Wing hallway. Dust in my lungs. The door gone. No bedroom. No journal. Just a blank stretch of scorched wall. I quit the next day. But sometimes, just before sleep takes me, I hear her voice through static. Come back, Jonah. I made the bed. The sea is waiting. And in my dreams, that door is always open. My name is Elise, and when my son was born, I bought the best baby monitor I could afford. Dual audio, night vision camera, crystal clear reception. I was a first-time mother, always anxious. I just wanted to know he was safe. But no monitor prepares you for voices when no one else is in the room. It started 2 weeks after we brought Noah home. The first night was innocent enough. I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard a soft lullaby coming through the monitor. Not mechanical or digital, no, it was a human voice. A woman's. She was singing something old. A tune I didn't recognize. The melody curled through the static, almost sweet. I rushed upstairs. Noah was asleep. Alone. The room was cold, though the heater was on. And the rocking chair, it was moving. Back and forth. Back and forth. I told myself it was wind. Maybe an old floorboard creaking. Maybe I'd imagined the song. But the next night, I heard her again. This time, she wasn't singing. She was speaking. Shush, don't cry. Mama's here. I didn't forget you this time. Hush, little lamb, back in your cradle. No more water. No more fire. The words were soft, distorted, but I felt them in my bones. I unplugged the monitor, reset the system, changed the channel. But it didn't stop. Sometimes I'd wake to Noah's laughter over the speaker. I'd rush in, he'd be smiling at the empty corner of the room. One night, I left the monitor recording. When I played it back, the air turned heavy. The voice was louder now. Clearer. She said. Why did you let them take him? He was mine first. You don't even know his true name. I contacted the landlord. Asked if there had been any history with the house. He hesitated, then told me the truth. The previous tenants had lost a child. A fire in the nursery. They said the mother had locked herself in the room, rocking her baby's charred bassinet 4 days before they found her. She died holding the monitor. Same model. Same brand. I moved Noah's crib to my room. I threw the monitor away. But some nights, just before I fall asleep, I hear her. Not through speakers. Through the wall. Give him back, Elise. He's still mine. He likes my songs better. And Noah, sometimes, he sings them back. Songs I never taught him. Songs no one remembers. I used to think sleep paralysis was just a trick of the brain. A misfiring signal between the mind and the body. A shadow that felt real because you were stuck in a dream. But that doesn't explain the man who visits only when I'm truly awake. It began after I moved into my cousin's guest room. He had passed unexpectedly, and his parents needed help sorting through his things. I agreed to stay for a week, just enough time to help clear out the room and pack away his books and clothes. That first night, I fell asleep facing the wall. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up to the sensation of weight on the bed. You know the feeling, when someone sits down gently, and the mattress dips just enough for you to feel it. I couldn't move. Not from fear. I simply couldn't. Then I felt the presence. Right behind me. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breaths. I wanted to turn. Scream. Anything. But I was frozen. Then came the whisper. Do you know where I left it? The voice was calm. Male. Familiar. I can't find it. I need it. You saw it, didn't you? I couldn't speak. Couldn't answer. Eventually, the weight lifted. The bed flattened. The room grew cold, and I was able to move again. I convinced myself it was sleep paralysis. Nothing more. But the next night, it happened again. And the next. He always appeared at 3:30. Always whispered from just behind me. It's here, somewhere. They took it from me. Don't look at the closet. Promise me. I never looked. Not once. Until the last night. Something told me it would be the last. This time, I didn't pretend to be asleep. I turned over. And there he was. Sitting at the edge of the bed. Gaunt, pale, dressed in my cousin's clothes. But the eyes, they weren't his. They were hollow. Wet. Reflecting something I couldn't understand. He looked at me and whispered. They buried it with me, but it doesn't belong there. I don't want it with me. Please, get it out. Then he pointed to the closet. It was the only time he touched me. His finger, ice cold, pressed against my chest. I opened the closet. Inside was an old box. Taped shut. Wrapped in newspaper dated 2 years before he died. Inside that, a journal. His. The final page read. I can't keep it here. It doesn't want to stay. But I can't throw it away. If I die, bury it deep. Don't let it near the light. Don't sleep where it rests. I burned it. Since then, I've slept soundly. But sometimes, around 3:30 a.m., I wake up anyway. Not from fear. But because the mattress shifts. And something cold presses against my chest. Back before cell phones were everywhere, I had an answering machine. You remember the kind, the little tape recorder inside, blinking red light when you had messages, that familiar click as the message began to play. After my sister Lydia died, I couldn't bring myself to erase the messages. Her voice was still on there, cheerful, alive. Hey, I'm on my way. Pick up if you're home. Call me back, loser. You better not be screaming again. That voice was all I had left of her. Until the night I got a new message. I hadn't given out my home number in months. I barely used the phone at all. But there it was. The blinking red light. I pressed play. Click. White noise. Then, faintly, breathing. I leaned in. And then, her voice. But not the way I remembered it. Not cheerful. Not warm. Panicked. You have to listen to me. He's not who he says he is. Don't open the door tonight. Click. I played it again. And again. Same words. Same fear in her voice. It couldn't be real. She'd been dead for 6 months. I told myself it was a prank. Maybe an old tape got scrambled. I tried to forget it. Until the second message came. Same voice. More frantic. He's already in the house. Don't trust the one in the mirror. He watches when you sleep. I unplugged the machine. Removed the tape. Burned it. And still, the red light blinked the next night. No machine. No tape. Just a blinking light on the plastic shell where it once lived. I moved. New house. New number. But 2 nights ago, I woke to a sound I haven't heard in years. Click. Then her voice. You moved. Good. But he found you again. Whatever you do, don't answer the phone. This morning, my landline rang for the first time since I moved in. I didn't pick up. But now it's blinking. Red. Waiting. There's a lake behind my grandparents' cabin in the Catskills. Glassy, still, cold even in summer. It's the kind of place where sound disappears, where even your thoughts feel quieter. We were always told not to swim after sunset. No one explained why. Just that the water changed after dark. I didn't listen. I was 17, full of doubt and daring. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I crept down to the dock, stripped to my shorts, and dove in. The water was colder than I expected. It pulled at my skin, like fingers made of ice. I surfaced quickly, shivering, laughing nervously to myself. Then I saw her. She was floating near the center of the lake, pale, long hair spreading around her like ink. Her eyes were open. Watching me. I blinked. She was gone. I swam back to the dock in silence, my pulse thudding in my ears. The next morning, I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. But then I started dreaming of her. Always the same dream, I'm standing on the dock. She's beneath the surface, arms outstretched, her mouth moving, forming words I can't hear. After the third night, I asked my grandfather about the lake. He was quiet for a long time before saying, "We had a girl drown out there. A long time ago. Never found her body." I asked how long ago. He said, "Before I was born." That night, I dreamt again, but this time, I heard her voice. "You found me. I've been waiting. They never let me leave." The next morning, I had lake water in my hair. I hadn't left the house. I stopped sleeping. Stopped looking at the lake. But on the 7th night, I sleepwalked. They found me at the edge of the dock, 1 foot in the water, whispering her name, though I never learned it. She visits less now. Only in dreams. But sometimes, when I walk by the lake, I see ripples when there's no wind. And sometimes, I hear her whisper. "Come back. You almost heard me. Next time, I'll pull you under." I didn't want to believe it at first. It's New York. You hear everything through the walls. Coughing, footsteps, arguments, laughter. People live on top of each other here. So when I moved into apartment 6B and started hearing whispers at night, I chalked it up to thin drywall and late-night phone calls. But these whispers, they didn't sound like anything I'd heard before. They weren't in English. Or any language I recognized. They came between 2 and 4 a.m., every single night. Soft, like two people having an urgent conversation just on the other side of the wall. But 6 a.m. was vacant. And 6C was empty all summer. I tried recording them. What I got was silence. Total silence. But I kept hearing them. Every night. It got to the point where I pressed my ear to the wall, just to try to make out a word. I wanted to believe it was just a neighbor, that maybe I was misjudging the layout of the building. But the longer I listened, the more I realized, the voices weren't beside me. They were behind me. Inside the apartment. I started sleeping with the lights on. Music playing. Earplugs in. Nothing helped. One night, I woke up to find a word scrawled on the bathroom mirror. Listen. I hadn't showered that day. There was no condensation. Nothing to reveal that message. But it was there, written in the dust. I wiped it away. The next night, it was back. Listen. We are still here. We never left. I went to the super. Asked about the history of the building. He got uncomfortable. Said there was a fire in 6B back in the 80s. A couple had died, trapped behind a locked door. Their neighbors heard them yelling. Whispering. But when help came, the apartment was empty. No bodies. No sign of anyone ever having lived there. Just ashes. Since then, tenants didn't stay long. I didn't either. I moved out after finding burn marks beneath the paint in the corner of my bedroom. Perfect handprints. Blackened outlines on the wall. Like someone had tried to claw their way through. The whispers still follow me sometimes. Even here, in my new place, I wake to hear them circling the bed. One voice. Then two. Growing louder. Telling me. You heard us once. You still belong to the fire. And the door, it never really opened. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew every street. But there was one road none of us talked about. A single-lane path hidden behind the woods, just past the old quarry. It didn't appear on maps. No signs pointed to it. But it was real. We called it the Forgotten Road. Local legend said it was cursed. That if you turned onto it after midnight, it would never let you go the same way you came. We thought it was just a story. Until we decided to test it. It was me, Jenna, and Louis. We were 17 and bored. We waited until 12:01 a.m., turned off our headlights, and took the sharp turn through the trees. The road was long. Twisting. Foggy, even though the night was clear everywhere else. After a while, we started to see things on the side of the path, old signs with no words, mailboxes without houses, shoes hanging from dead branches. Then, we saw her. A woman in white, standing at the center of the road. Her back was turned. Hair like seaweed. Bare feet. Jenna slammed the brakes. The woman didn't move. Didn't turn. Didn't breathe. Louis rolled down the window and shouted, "Hey, do you need help?" She lifted her hand. Not to wave. To point. Right at us. Then she turned. Her face wasn't right. It was blurred. Like a photo mid-shake. Eyes too large. Mouth sewn shut. We drove. Faster than we should have. But the road stretched on. No turns. No end. Then, without warning, we were back at the start. Right at the same turn we had taken 15 minutes earlier. Except, the clock read 4:12 a.m. 3 hours gone. We never spoke about it after that. But sometimes I dream of her. I see her pointing again. Mouth sewn closed. Eyes watching me from behind lids that never blink. In the dream, I always take a step closer. And I always wake up sweating, my shoes muddy. As if I've been walking. As if the forgotten road remembers me. There was a mirror in my grandmother's attic. Tall. Ornate. The kind with curling edges like frozen vines and a frame too heavy for one person to carry. It leaned against the far wall, covered in a lace cloth that smelled like dust and dried lavender. I was warned not to touch it. My grandmother told me, it doesn't show reflections. It remembers them. I thought it was just a poetic way of saying it was old. Sentimental. Delicate. But I should have listened. The first time I looked into it, I saw myself. Mostly. Except I wasn't alone. Behind me stood a girl. Not older than 10. Hair braided in twin plaits. Skin pale like wax. She didn't blink. I turned, heart pounding. No one was there. When I looked back at the mirror, she was gone. I told myself it was my imagination. But she kept returning. Each time I visited the attic, she was there, closer, clearer. Her mouth would twitch like she was trying to speak. One day, I stayed longer. I asked, "What do you want?" She raised her hand. And tapped the glass. Not from my side. From inside. 3 gentle knocks. Then, she opened her mouth. No sound. Just a scream I couldn't hear, but could feel. Like ice water pouring down my spine. I ran. I told my grandmother. Her hands trembled. She said, "You spoke to her." I nodded. She whispered, "Then it's too late." That night, I dreamt of the attic. The mirror. And the girl, stepping out of it. She didn't speak. She just watched me sleep. For weeks after, every mirror in the house showed her. Standing in the corners. Just watching. Eventually, I covered them all. But I kept dreaming of her. She never aged. Never blinked. Just stared. Until one morning, she was gone. No reflection. No dream. No taps. Relieved, I uncovered the mirror in the attic to be sure. And I finally saw myself again. Alone. But as I turned to leave, my reflection didn't follow. It stayed. Smiling. And behind it, the girl was waiting. It was a cold November evening when I found the letter. I was wandering the old cemetery near my house, the one no one visits anymore. The iron gate was rusted, the gravestones cracked and leaning. The wind whispered between the bare branches, and the sky was heavy with dark clouds. That's when I saw it, tucked beneath a broken angel statue. A yellowed envelope, sealed but brittle with age. I hesitated. The cemetery was meant for the dead to rest in peace. But curiosity pulled me closer. I slipped the letter out. The handwriting was shaky, faded. To whoever finds this. The letter told a story. Of a man who lost his wife. She had died young. Taken by the fever that swept through the town decades ago. He buried her beneath the angel statue. But every night, he heard her voice. Calling. Begging. Please come find me. He wrote that he had hidden something beneath her grave, a small box with her last words, her memories. Take it. Set her free. The letter ended with a plea. If you hear her, do not ignore it. I looked around. The wind died down. The world fell silent. I dug. The soil was cold and soft. Beneath the statue, I found a small metal box. Inside, a diary. Filled with letters. From her. To him. Each one a confession of love, fear, and regret. But one page stood out. Written in a different hand. I never left. That night, as I read her words, the air grew thick. I heard her. Softly. Whispering. Calling my name. Since then, I've kept the diary close. Sometimes at night, I hear footsteps pacing in the room. A quiet voice, just out of reach. Thank you. I'm free now. And then silence. When I was a child, my family moved into a house built in the 1920s. It had creaky floors, drafty windows, and a basement full of forgotten things. One rainy afternoon, while exploring, I found a small, porcelain doll sitting on a wooden crate. She had a cracked face, dark eyes that seemed too alive, and a faded blue dress. I brought her upstairs. That night, I heard soft footsteps below my bedroom window. I thought it was the wind. But then I heard whispering. A child's voice, barely audible. Play with me. I looked out. No one there. The doll was on my dresser. But she had moved. The next morning, she was gone. I searched everywhere. Days later, I found her back in the basement. Sitting on the crate again. The whispering grew louder. It called my name. One night, I woke to see her standing at the foot of my bed. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. I reached out. She vanished. My parents told me to throw her away. I did. But the whispering didn't stop. Sometimes, when the house is silent, I hear tiny footsteps. And a soft voice. Play with me. It started with the calls. At first, just once or twice a week, silent calls in the middle of the night. My phone would ring. I'd answer, and hear only breathing. No voice. No sound but the slow, steady rise and fall of breath. I told myself it was a prank. But it wasn't. The calls became daily. Sometimes multiple times a night. I tried blocking numbers. They came from everywhere. Unknown. Impossible to trace. One night, I stayed up waiting for the call. When it came, I answered. Hello. A whisper, I'm here. Cold air filled the room. The line went dead. Then my phone rang again. A different number. I answered. This time, a voice. Soft. Female. We are trapped. I dropped the phone. It never stopped. I started writing down the times. The voices. The messages. Each call was a confession. A plea. A warning. One voice told me she died alone, forgotten in an abandoned hospital. Another whispered about a fire. Another, a lost child, calling for her mother. The last message I received still haunts me. A voice, barely audible, said, "Don't forget us." Since then, the calls come less often. But every night, just before sleep, my phone vibrates once. No number. No message. Just a reminder. They're still here. There's a shadow that lives in my hallway. It doesn't belong to anyone. No matter how many lights I turn on, it waits. Always just at the edge of vision. I first noticed it when I moved into my apartment. Late at night, when the world was quiet, I'd see a dark shape stretch and shift along the wall. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks. But the shadow started to move on its own. Sometimes, it lingers near the bedroom door. Sometimes, it follows me down the hall. One night, I heard footsteps behind me. But when I turned, no one was there. Only the shadow. It doesn't speak. It only watches. I tried to confront it. I said, "Who are you?" It didn't answer. Instead, the hallway grew cold. The lights flickered. And I felt a breath, soft, cold, on my neck. Since then, the shadow has gotten bolder. It appears in mirrors. Standing just behind me. But when I turn, nothing. Sometimes, it moves closer while I sleep. I wake to find the hallway dark and empty. But the feeling lingers. Like something unseen is still there. Waiting. Watching. The house we moved into had a secret. Not a secret anyone talked about. A hidden room. Behind a bookshelf in the study. It was small, dark, and dusty. With no windows. When I first found it, I felt a chill. Like the room itself was waiting. Inside, there was an old diary. Its pages brittle and yellowed. The writing was hurried, desperate. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor. She wrote about being trapped. About voices that whispered in the walls. And a shadow that moved when no one was watching. Her last entry was a plea. "If anyone finds this, help me." That night, strange things began. Whispers from the room. Doors closing by themselves. Cold spots that followed me through the house. I tried to ignore it. But the house had its own story. A story Eleanor wanted to tell. One night, I heard footsteps in the secret room. Slow, deliberate. I opened the door. No one there. But the diary was open on the floor. A new page. Written in fresh ink. "You are not alone. I hear it every night. A lullaby. Soft. Fragile. It drifts through my room just after midnight. The kind of song a mother sings to soothe a child. But I don't have children. And no one sings here. The first time I heard it, I thought it was the wind. Or maybe a dream. But it returned. Night after night. The melody is haunting. The words I can barely make out. Something about a lost child. A promise. And waiting. I followed the sound once. It led me to the old nursery at the end of the hall. The room was empty. Except for an old rocking chair. Swaying gently. No breeze. No one in sight. I sat in the chair. The lullaby stopped. But then, a whisper. "Don't forget me." I've tried to ignore it. But the lullaby is persistent. Sometimes, I feel a small hand in mine. Cold. Light. Invisible. It's a comfort. And a warning. That the past is never truly gone. That some voices linger. Singing us to sleep. Waiting. There's a portrait hanging in the hallway of my grandparents' house. An old woman. Her eyes seem to follow you wherever you go. At least, that's what I thought as a kid. One evening, I stayed up late, waiting to prove it was just a trick of the light. But as the clock struck midnight, the eyes blinked. Slowly. Deliberately. I froze. Then, the eyes narrowed, and a faint smile appeared. I told my grandmother. She looked at the painting and sighed. "That's Agnes," she said softly. "She was the housekeeper. A kind woman, but she died here, long ago. She watches over us." That night, I dreamed of Agnes. She was standing by my bedside, her eyes full of sorrow. She whispered, "Protect them." After that, strange things happened. The portrait would appear in places it wasn't hung. The eyes would glow faintly when the lights went out. Once, I caught a glimpse of her in the mirror behind me. But when I turned, only the empty hallway. Agnes's gaze stays with me. Quiet. Watching. Waiting. In the corner of the old town library, there's a shelf no one uses. Dusty, crooked. The books there don't have titles. No authors' names. But if you listen closely, they whisper. At first, it was just faint murmurs. Like pages turning on their own. But soon, the whispers grew louder. Soft voices telling stories. Secrets. Confessions. One night, I stayed late to listen. The voices called my name. I reached out to touch a book. The whispers stopped. Then, a voice spoke clearly. "Read me." I opened the book. The pages were blank. Until words appeared. Handwritten, glowing faintly in the dim light. They told a story of a woman trapped between worlds. Of lost love and broken promises. And a warning. Beware the silence that follows. Since then, the books have spoken to me. Sometimes warning. Sometimes pleading. Sometimes singing lullabies to the lonely. The library is alive in ways no one sees. And the whispers remind me. We are never truly alone. There was a candle. Old. Tapered. Almost melted down to the wick. I found it in the attic of an abandoned house. The label was faded, but the scent was sharp, like smoke and lavender. I lit it. The flame flickered and danced, casting long shadows. And then, I heard a voice. Soft. Almost a sigh. "Thank you." The candle burned longer than it should have. Hours passed, but the flame stayed steady. Whispers filled the room. Telling stories. Confessions. One voice spoke of a promise kept. Another of a love lost. Each flicker revealed faces, ghostly, sorrowful. I wanted to blow it out. But I couldn't. The flame pulled me in. When the candle finally died, the room fell silent. And I felt a presence leave. A weight lifted. But sometimes, when the night is still, I smell smoke and lavender. And I hear the whisper. I'm not gone yet. This is the last story I have for you tonight. The one that ties all the voices together. A confession whispered through the ages. A soul seeking peace. I found it in an old journal, hidden beneath a floorboard. The writer spoke of regret. Of mistakes. Of love lost to time. Their words trembled with sorrow. But also hope. Hope that someone would listen. That someone would understand. And maybe, forgive. As I read the final lines, a warmth filled the room. The voices I had heard, soft, gentle, gathered around me. A chorus of whispered thank yous. A lullaby of closure. And then silence. A quiet peace. Thank you for listening. For opening your heart to these voices from the other side. May their stories bring you calm, and their whispers guide your dreams. Dear listener, if you enjoyed these stories, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Until next time, sleep well.